Hey guys, today I'm sharing with you my homemade pumpkin donuts recipe. So good, so full of flavor. If you love pumpkin spice, you're gonna love this recipe. Let's go ahead and get started. In a bowl here, I have 2 tablespoons of shortening that I have just popped in a microwave and melted, and to that I'm adding in some vanilla extract. Just about a teaspoon of vanilla extract or so. And to that, my shortening has cooled down a bit since it was melted. We're going to add in 1 large egg, and we're going to whisk this until it is nice and smooth. So take about 30 seconds or so and whisk that together until nice and smooth. Now we're going to need some pumpkin puree. You can find a can of this in the baking section in your grocery store. What I do is I open up the can and I place it in a Ziploc bag and keep it in the fridge, because a lot of times I will use these for donuts, muffins, pancakes, waffles around this time of year, so it's definitely good to have a can on hand. I don't use the whole thing unless I'm doing maybe a pumpkin pie. So we're just going to use a little bit here. I'm going to add that in, and we're going to whisk that until nice and smooth. All the amounts will be listed below in the description box for you. Mix that pumpkin puree in. And then we're going to go ahead and add in some whole milk. Give that a nice mix. And now we're going to move over to our dry ingredients. In the bowl here, I have some all-purpose flour, some baking powder, some pumpkin pie spice, very important, and some granulated sugar. Again, everything will be listed below in the description box. We're going to give our dry ingredients a really nice mix to make sure that that baking powder and that pumpkin pie spice is thoroughly incorporated throughout everything. So take about a good minute, mix that in really well. Then we're going to make a little well in the center of our bowl, add in our wet ingredients, get all of that in there, and we're going to slowly start incorporating our dry to our wet. Once it comes together like so, we're going to switch over to our hands. So we're going to clean off our spatula. And using our hands, we're just going to start folding in the dough over itself, just to start incorporating all of the flour. Make sure and get all of that flour as much as you can. And now we're going to gently knead this with our wrist, the back of our wrist there. Just gently knead it just for about 1 minute to 2 minutes. We're not trying to overwork our flour. We just want it to come together so it's nice and smooth. We don't want to press too hard on it because it can get a little bit sticky, so just go ahead and gently knead it for about 1 minute to 2 minutes until it comes together into a smooth dough ball. Not sticky or tacky, but nice and smooth. Now that we have a nice smooth dough ball, I'm going to go ahead and form that into a ball. I'm going to get some flour, about a tablespoon of flour, and put some at the bottom of my bowl as well as the top of my dough ball here. Get all of the sides and everything coated in flour. And we're just going to let this dough sit and rest for about 30 minutes. 25 to 30 minutes we want this to rest, so that because we kneaded it and everything, we want it to be nice and rested. So cover that up with a towel, a kitchen towel, And while that's sitting and resting, we're going to go ahead and make our glaze. I have a tablespoon of butter here that is softened. I just use regular butter that we use for our bread. You can use unsalted if you want, but just make sure that it is softened at room temperature. And to that, we're going to go ahead and add in some powdered sugar. We're going to take the back of a spoon and we're going to press that butter into our powdered sugar. At first, it may look like it's not coming together, but just work that powdered sugar into that butter and it will come into a nice smooth paste. So after we have our nice little paste here, you can add a splash of vanilla extract, and my secret ingredient is I use my International Delight coffee creamer. I am using French vanilla here. You can use pumpkin spice, coffee creamer, caramel, you name it. But this is going to add a really lovely flavor. We're going to add a little bit at a time. Start off with about a half a tablespoon and work that in. I'm going to end up using about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half in total, but it's going to completely depend on your mixture. So start off with a tablespoon. And what we're looking for is a nice thick mixture, but smooth, and it's like a nice glaze. So we don't want it too thin, but we don't want it too thick either. So we want it to be like a glaze consistency, but still thick enough so when it hardens on the top of our donut, we have a nice, perfect little glaze. That looks amazing. We're going to go ahead and set that aside now. Now our dough has been resting for about 30 minutes, and at this point it's going to be a little bit moist because of all that pumpkin puree and everything that's going on in there. So I have a little bit of flour here. I have 1/8 cup extra flour, which is 2 tablespoons. So I'm going to take 1 tablespoon and place on my counter. I'm going to take the next tablespoon and place on the top of my dough. It's going to be a very nice moist dough. So I'm going to place that next tablespoon right on top. The thing is, we don't want too much of a moist dough because we want this to cook thoroughly. So now that I have that extra 2 tablespoons of flour on my counter and on my dough, I'm just going to work this flour into my dough at this point. I don't add it initially because I don't want my dough to be too tough. And again, I'm not over kneading this because I don't want my dough to be too tough or to have a hard donut. So just gently for about 30 seconds, work in that extra flour. We have a nice smooth dough ball. Gonna get another little teaspoon of flour just to coat our surface here. Plop our dough on there. Sprinkle about a teaspoon of flour on top as well, not too much. And we're gonna get a rolling pin. We're gonna roll this out until it's about 1/4 inch thick. Use your finger as a guide, so you want about 1/4 inch thick. Make sure all the sides are even as well. And what I have here is my donut cutter. Now, if you don't have a donut cutter, just go ahead and use a glass, the back of a glass or a cup. My donut cutter is about 4 inches in diameter. And I'm going to go ahead and press that on and give it a little shake around to make sure that it is nice and cut evenly around. And there I have my beautiful donut as well as my donut hole. Now to make your donut hole, you just want something that's a little bit smaller, about 1.5 inches in diameter. So you can use maybe the bottle cap of a honey bottle, or find something around your kitchen and be creative if you don't have a donut cutter. It is definitely possible to make this without a donut cutter. I'm just going to continue on with my donuts, and you want to make sure that you have some vegetable oil in a pot about 2 inches up the side. Whatever size pot you're using, I'm using a smaller pot so I don't have to use much oil. You want it to be 2 2 inches up the side, as well as you want to make sure that it's nice and warm. Medium to medium-low heat. We're going to place our donut in, and this is going to float up top. It's going to take about 15 seconds for it to float up top, and once it floats up top, we're going to let it sit there for 30 seconds. So after that initial 30 seconds, we're just going to go ahead and flip our donut. I'm using a slotted spoon as well as a smaller spoon to help me out. And as we flip it, we're going to let it go for another 30 seconds. Then we're going to flip it again and let it go for another 30 seconds. And then again for another 30 seconds. You also don't want your donut just sitting too much in one spot. So you see here, I'm kind of just giving a little bit of a zhuzh to make it move around a little bit. So I'm going to flip it again. In total, we want about 2.5 minutes. So I like to let it go about 30 seconds each side for about 2.5 minutes. Now these have pumpkin puree in it and they have pumpkin spice in it, so it's going to be a dark, beautiful fall color of a donut. So after about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, again I'm flipping it probably for my last 30 seconds here. You want to make sure that it is fully cooked through. And you want to make sure again that your heat is like about a medium to medium low. I like to keep it on medium, closer to the medium low side. Not exactly on medium low, because if it's too low it's going to soak up too much oil. If it's too hot it's going to get too dark outside without cooking thoroughly on the inside. Remove it and place it on a tray. And here I am showing you my donut holes. I'm just going to put in about 4 or 5 at a time. Again, they're going to float up top just like the donuts. We're going to let these go for about 2 minutes, and I'm going to constantly just keep moving them around so each side is getting cooked thoroughly and evenly. And there you have it. Just go ahead and remove them and drain them really well with your slotted spoon. Place them on a plate, and when they're still nice and warm, I like to take them and take our glaze and dunk our donut in our glaze. Swirl it around in a circle a few times. Then lift it up at an angle to let the remaining drip, and then twirl it one more time. And there we have our glazed pumpkin donut. And these are amazing the first day, but I'm going to be honest with you, the next day they are even better. So if you can make this probably late in the evening time and have it the next morning for breakfast, that glaze will solidify on top, so you get a nice crunchy outside, a super soft cakey donut in the inside with that right amount of pumpkin flavor. It's not too overpowering. It's just delicious. It's just delicious. I'll have all the amounts listed below for you guys in the description box. If you try it and you enjoy it, let me know, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.